Hey folks, at 11:25 am on Friday the 14th of September 2007, a CCTV camera at King's Cross Station recorded a 14-year-old boy leaving the building and walking out into London. He had come down from Doncaster alone. He was wearing dark jeans, Vans, a slipknot top and a patched messenger bag. He had a PSP with him. He had taken money from a cash machine that morning, and as far as can be ascertained, there has never been a confirmed sighting of him again after he passed beyond that camera. That boy was Andrew Gosden. His family have wondered whether him leaving was a spontaneous decision that he made on the morning itself, rather than him having fully planned to leave. But whatever prompted it, that morning still played out as a sequence of deliberate choices, followed by a total disappearance. He travelled more than 150 miles, arrived in one of the busiest parts of the country before lunch, and then somehow left no trace whatsoever after that. There is enough planning to make it clear he meant to get to London, but there is not enough preparation to make it look as though he was ready to live a hidden life from that day onwards, as some have suspected. So, you are left in between those two ideas, trying to understand a journey that seems to have a purpose without being able to fully understand what that purpose could have been. Andrew was born on the 10th of July 1993 and grew up in Balby, Doncaster, with his parents Kevin and Glenys and his older sister Charlotte. His family were close. Kevin has described a home where they ate together, talked together, and where wider family was part of normal life. He has also said that Andrew knew London because much of Kevin's family lived in or around the city. His nickname at home was Roo. It came from when he was a lot younger, as he was quite energetic and bouncy back when very young. Andrew was also very bright. His father has said that both Andrew and Charlotte were gifted academically, especially with maths, and Andrew had attended a summer school at Lancaster University through a national programme for gifted young people. His school was Macaulay Catholic High, and he was known for reliability as much as his ability. He had 100% attendance. When Andrew failed to arrive at school on the day he would come to disappear, that was obviously not normal behaviour for him and was completely out of character. The picture of Andrew that comes through from his family is not just that he was a clever young lad. He liked comedy, he liked music, games, snooker, books, and collecting rocks and minerals. Kevin has spoken about taking him to see Muse, and about Andrew often being found at home playing on his Xbox. He seems to have been happy in his own company, not in a withdrawn way, but in the way that some people just prefer. That is important because a lot of hypotheses about Andrew begin by trying to invent a visible crisis in his life, whether that might have been a fight, bullying, some sort of secret, or some other kind of huge rupture in his life that would make the morning of his disappearance make sense. But the people closest to him have never described the days beforehand that way, and they have said that they never saw any evidence that he was being bullied, insisting something like that wouldn't have gone unnoticed. There is one claim that pushes against that picture, and it deserves mentioning even though nobody has ever been able to stand it up. Sometime after Andrew went missing, someone posted on an online forum for a music magazine, claiming to have gone to school with him and to have shared classes with him, and said that Andrew had in fact been picked on and only had a couple of friends. Again, as far as I can tell, there is no hard evidence to say that this was happening. Those that knew him best did not seem to think that it was the case, or at least didn't have the evidence to say that it was. Charlotte was also part of the school's anti-bullying scheme. The claim that he was being bullied was never verified, and the poster was never identified. Official police involvement began with what started as an ordinary Friday morning. Andrew left the house dressed for school. He said bye to his dad and waved him off. To his family, at that moment, the day looked like any other school day. Except Andrew, it seems, did not intend to go to school. Police now say that instead of heading straight for the bus, he spent time in Westfield Park near his home. A close family friend, Alan Murray, someone who was practically part of the household, later remembered seeing him there at about 8:20 am, still in his uniform. By waiting there, Andrew appears to have given the house time to empty. Once his family had gone, he returned home. Andrew changed out of his school clothes and into the outfit he would later be seen wearing in London. He took his bank card, his PSP, and his messenger bag. He left the PSP charger behind and he did not take his passport. He also left behind £100 of his own birthday money sitting untouched in his room, and he took no coat or jumper with him. After leaving the house again, a camera placed him on Littlemore Lane, heading towards Doncaster railway station. At 9:08 AM, he stopped at a cash machine and withdrew £200. That was almost the whole balance available to him. Some of the small things in this case paint a confused picture, and they do not seem to agree with each other. Waiting for the rest of the family to leave, and then heading back home to change clothes alongside withdrawing money suggests planning. The fact that he didn't take his PSP charger suggests that he wasn't really thinking too far into the future. The fact that he left the passport at home makes it very difficult to imagine that he was ever going to try to leave the country. The untouched birthday money maybe suggests that he wasn't thinking too clearly and might have been in a rush or felt a bit panicky. And the lack of any message to his family is hard to square with the picture of a boy from a close household who had no known pattern of running off, and rather was something of a homebird that would always leave notes for his family when he left. By 9:22 AM, he was at the Doncaster station. He bought the ticket to London King's Cross. The person selling the ticket to him later remembered that a return journey had been offered for less than £1 more, but Andrew still chose the one-way fare. I'm sure you can imagine that detail has had a lot of weight placed on it over the years, and obviously it's impossible not to notice it. A one-way ticket could mean that someone is just planning to not come back, but at the same time it could also mean a teenager not really thinking about the return journey yet. Or again, someone that wasn't thinking too clearly. After all, what he was doing will have put him out of his comfort zone. Kevin has said the single ticket did not strike the family as proof of anything by itself, because Andrew had relatives in London and could plausibly have got himself to someone if he needed to. At 9:36 AM, Andrew got on the train. A passenger later remembered a boy travelling quietly and playing on his PSP. There was nothing about that scene that would have made a stranger intervene. To anyone else on the carriage, he was just a young passenger with a handheld game and a bag. I suppose one could ask, why was such a young person not at school? Perhaps that may have been odd to some, though nobody seemed to question it. The train reached King's Cross at around 11:20 AM. 5 minutes later, Andrew walked out of the station. And there, frustratingly, the hard evidence just stops. Back in Doncaster, nobody at home yet knew that something had gone wrong. Andrew had obviously not arrived at school, but the family did not learn that in time to really do anything about it. By early evening, they had thought that he was either in his room playing games or snooker. Kevin has said they discovered he was missing when they called him for dinner and realised he was not there. At first, nobody panicked and the ordinary explanations were explored. Maybe he was with a friend. Maybe time had simply got away from him. Even though nobody will have realised it in that moment, the numbers were on the family's side. Tens of thousands of under-16s go missing from home in Britain every year, and the overwhelming majority of them turn up again within a day or two. That statistic, along with the charger and the birthday money being left behind, could have pointed in that direction and gave everyone something to hold on to in those first hours. It was later realised that staff from the school had tried to call Andrew's parents to inform them that he had not arrived, but they ended up leaving a message with the wrong parents, which is just egregiously bad if you stop and think about that for a moment. So much later then, once the family realised that he had never reached school in the first place, now the panic really began to set in. As said, Andrew had a 100% record of turning up. So once they knew he had never made it to lessons, the question was no longer, where is Andrew tonight? It became, where has Andrew been since this morning? That is a massive difference too, because the first few hours of any disappearance are generally considered the most important. Once time starts to pass, it becomes increasingly more difficult to solve. The family called friends, they contacted hospitals. Kevin and Charlotte drove the route he should have taken to school, looking for any sign of an accident or some ordinary explanation that would at least be findable. Over the weekend, family friends drove to Whitby, because Andrew was known to have liked that town a lot, and also because before the ticket seller was spoken to, London was not yet confirmed as his destination. That confirmation came after staff at Doncaster station were questioned. Andrew had gone south and he'd reached King's Cross. And because of that, the search had to move from a family home in Doncaster to the enormous sprawl around central London. There was an enormous practical problem at the centre of this. In theory, King's Cross should have been one of the better places for someone to leave a trace. There are trains, buses, the underground, shops, streets, pedestrians, and an incredible amount of cameras. A boy in distinctive clothes, arriving in daylight, should have been trackable for more than just a few seconds. In 2007, there was a lot of surveillance, but it's not quite the same as now. The cameras existed, but most systems still ran on tape that cycled back over itself after a matter of weeks. Searching through what remained was not simple either, and King's Cross Station's own footage wasn't reviewed closely enough to spot Andrew until 3 weeks after he went missing. By then, the footage from the buses and the tube station next door, which nobody had requested in time, was already gone, and so the chance of following Andrew through the next camera, and the one after that, had already been lost. That is one of the most painful parts of this case. Not because the next piece of CCTV would definitely have solved everything, but because it might have given the search a direction. It might have shown whether Andrew turned towards the underground, towards buses, towards the street, towards a person, or towards nobody at all. When a case has only a handful of solid facts as this one does, even one more minute or so worth of tracking could have been enormous in figuring out what had happened. The family did everything they could when there wasn't an obvious destination to look. They searched places that made sense from Andrew's life. London was not random to him. He had family connections there. He knew tourist attractions. The museums appealed to him. And Kevin later recalled Andrew having shown an interest in the Tutankhamun exhibition then running at the British Museum. He also liked music, so various places were considered as relevant places to look and question the public. Kevin and Glenys went further than simply guessing. They worked through that week's listing of gigs and events across the city, trying to reconstruct what might have drawn their son there. A few names came up too. 30 Seconds to Mars were playing the night he disappeared, though nobody was convinced he knew their music. Sixth, a band with ties to Slipknot were on at a venue within walking distance of King's Cross, and a retired head of the Metropolitan Police's facial identification unit thought that lead was worth pursuing enough to ask the public for photos and videos from the crowd, so that officers trying to pick out faces from thousands of images could comb through them. Him, a band Andrew genuinely loved, had an in-store signing planned at a record shop later that month. None of it produced a sighting. Every one of those leads was followed, and every one of them ran cold. It is possible Andrew went to London for something ordinary in his own mind. Maybe feeling fed up or frustrated for some reason that we don't understand. He could have gone for a day out to the shops, a museum, a music-related plan, a private errand he thought he could later explain. Kevin has said that the family wondered whether he might have done something and then planned to face the consequences afterwards. I think we've all been there. But if that is true, something still has to account for the total radio silence after King's Cross. There are so many disappearances where it just simply isn't known why the person in question left. There are other cases where that is clear, but it's just not known what happened to them after they left. Andrew's case is both of those. The first half looks purposeful to some degree, and the second half just hits a blank wall. The internet hypothesis has always been one of the more unpleasant possibilities, that Andrew had arranged to meet someone, but publicly there has never been a confirmed online trail that explains the trip. The official police material focuses on what he physically did that morning and where he was last recorded, not on any known message chain or named contact. That does not make a meeting impossible. It just means that if one happened, the evidence for it has just never been found. Without a communication trail, such a suspicion can start to float away from the facts very quickly. Even if it was the case that Andrew did go to meet someone, it might not have had anything to do with an online presence at all. Someone could have spoken to Andrew back in Doncaster. Someone could have crossed paths with him after he reached London. He could have gone for a reason that had nothing to do with another person at all. All of those are possible, though none can be proven. What makes the online contact idea so hard to stand up is quite how few doors into Andrew's life there were to check. He had no social media accounts at all, at a time when Facebook and MySpace were really taking off. His sister had recently been given a laptop and was the only computer in the house. And by all accounts, Andrew barely touched it. Investigators went as far as sending the serial number of his PSP to Sony, hoping to find some record of an online account or a message exchange tied to the console. Nothing came back. If Andrew was drawn into contact with somebody, it was not through any of the ordinary channels a 14-year-old in 2007 would have used. Andrew had stopped going to Boy Scouts a few months before he disappeared, closing off one of the few places he regularly saw people outside school. And in the week before he disappeared, on 2 separate days, he chose to walk to school instead of taking the bus, a route that would have taken well over an hour each way on foot. That is exactly the kind of window in which a stranger could have approached him, and it's exactly the kind of detail that nobody would even have realised at the time. Kevin and Glenys have also questioned and wondered whether Andrew might have been quietly working through some questions about his own sexuality, and whether that was something he found too difficult to raise with them, even in a household as open as theirs. 2 years on, with nothing else to go on, Kevin made a direct public appeal to the gay community, saying plainly that Andrew would be loved and welcomed home even if he did happen to be gay, and that it simply didn't matter to them either way. There's no evidence to suggest that he was exactly, only that it was noted that young people in the LGBT community often run away from home at higher rates than others. So it was offered as one more reason a 14-year-old might feel he had to leave without saying why. Over the years, there have been reported sightings and possible leads, but none have ever been confirmed as actually being Andrew. There were a few moments of temporary hope, which can't have been very nice for Andrew's family to have dealt with, only for those hopes to have been dashed. Some of those moments came agonisingly close to seeming like there might be something to them. Kevin has said the sightings he found most plausible was a report from a Pizza Hut on Oxford Street, about 2.6 miles from King's Cross, on the very day that Andrew disappeared, where a witness described a boy with mannerisms that matched his. The family say it was never properly investigated. Within days, there were reports of someone matching his description back on Oxford Street, sleeping rough in a park in Southwark. And later, a passenger who thought they saw him getting off a train at Mortlake Station, south of the river. Kevin has said 2 or 3 of the earliest sightings felt credible to him, purely because of the way the witnesses described the boy's voice, though none could ever be verified. Further reports placed a similar-looking young man in Streatham, and further afield still in South Wales, Birkenhead, Plymouth and Southend. A little over a month after he disappeared, in October, a woman named Philippa approached the teenager in Covent Garden, and she believed this was Andrew, having seen his photograph on the news. He denied being Andrew and walked away from her into a nearby cafe called the Poetry Place. And by the time she went in after him, he was already gone. Staff there could only say they thought they might have seen him with 2 other teenagers, though there was nothing more definite than that. Not least because Andrew's haircut was an extremely common one for boys his age at the time. The family have complained that Philippa herself wasn't interviewed by police until 6 weeks later. The first anniversary in September of 2008, the Times reported that 122 possible sightings had been logged from across Britain, including 45 from London alone and 11 from Brighton. None of them ever became more than just sightings, unfortunately. In this time though, there is one report that stands out for simply how strange it is. In late 2008, a man walked into a police station in Herefordshire, out of hours, and used the intercom to say he had information about Andrew. Whoever was meant to come and take his details didn't reach the desk in time, and the man had already gone. Perhaps getting cold feet, or the whole thing was a sick joke, it's really not clear. Not long after that, a letter arrived at the BBC, unsigned, claiming to be from the same man and describing a possible sighting of Andrew many miles to the northwest of London. it was never possible to confirm that the letter and the man at the intercom were even connected, let alone that either lead was real. Kevin has described reports like that one as particularly awful, offering just enough detail to feel plausible while giving nothing that could actually be checked. During the investigation, especially towards the beginning, the police spent a considerable amount of time questioning the Gosden family and examining whether Andrew's home life offered an explanation. Kevin later said he felt as though he was being treated as a suspect. That first Christmas, with the police pressing for further questioning of the family and no answers anywhere in sight, the weight of it became too much for Kevin. It's difficult to get this point across on YouTube, but because the police spent much of the time looking into the family, Kevin started to believe that stepping away permanently from the picture and life itself would force the police to actually focus on finding Andrew. While he was in the middle of this act, the family friend, Alan Murray, visited the Gosden house after hearing a sudden crashing and banging noise. Alan used his spare key to enter and found Kevin in a very precarious situation on the upstairs balustrade. He quickly intervened, managing to get Kevin down safely and rushed him to the hospital. Kevin regained consciousness and subsequently spent the following months in a mental health facility, receiving the care he so desperately needed at that time. He has since become the public face for the search for his son, running a dedicated website chronicling the case and giving interviews whenever he thought it might reach someone who knew something. The family have kept trying to make Andrew recognisable as an adult, not just as the boy in the old CCTV footage. Kevin has written about the details that might still matter. The unusual shape of Andrew's right ear, his deafness in his left ear, his need for strong prescription glasses or contacts, the way he spoke quickly and quietly, and even the possibility that he might have gaps in whatever life story people around him know. Given that it's not really clear what exactly happened to Andrew, some believe that he might still be out there. Because of that, the search is actually now for a man who, as of the 6th of July 2026, is 32 years old and about to turn 33. A man who might look very different, but will still be carrying those small traits. In 2019, South Yorkshire Police released another age-progressed image and repeated those identifying details. The appeal was not just aimed at strangers on the street, it was aimed at anyone who might know an adult with an incomplete past, or someone who avoids ordinary paperwork, or someone whose physical features that are very specific. That does not mean the police are saying that Andrew is definitively alive, but it does mean that they have not closed that door entirely. The investigation has tried to uncover the more unpleasant possibility too, not just the hopeful one. A couple of years in, with nothing else to go on, the family privately paid for a sonar survey of a stretch of the River Thames, using the kind of equipment normally used to find the missing at sea. Nothing that belonged to Andrew was ever found. Years later, in 2017, on the 10th anniversary, police carried out a fresh appeal, circulating his DNA profile, fingerprints and dental records to hospitals and clinics, on the reasoning that a young man with eyesight as poor as Andrew's, he would likely have needed to see an optician or something else at some point in the decade since. Perhaps the strangest near miss in the whole case came in 2018. A man reported an online conversation with someone using the name Andy Rue, who said he needed money because a partner had left him, then refused a bank transfer by saying he did not have an account. He also mentioned that he left home when he was just 14. Rue, of course, was the nickname Andrew's family had always called him by, and for a moment, again, it must have felt like there was some hope. Police tried to trace the conversation through the platform that it happened on, but the company had recently overhauled its systems, and the underlying data was already gone. The public investigation has had moments where it seemed briefly that the case might gain more information. In December of 2021, police arrested two men in London while examining whether Andrew could have been taken all those years prior. Items were seized and their devices were examined. For a while, the case had a new direction after years of nothing. By September of 2023, detectives had removed those men from the inquiry. Their accounts had been checked and the police said that they had been eliminated as suspects. Andrew's parents expressed sympathy for the men who had been cleared, while also acknowledging that their own family was no closer to knowing what had happened to Andrew. That reaction does say a lot about the family. After 16 years of not knowing, after finally seeing an investigative development and then watching it collapse into another dead end, they still thought about the damage done by a wrong suspicion. The investigation remains open. In September of 2025, South Yorkshire Police said again that new information is reviewed and pursued where appropriate. Missing People still carries an appeal for Andrew, including a direct message to him, offering support if he ever wants to reach out and talk, or if he wants to pass on a message, or simply let someone know that he's safe. In the hope that Andrew will come home one day, the family have never changed the locks on the door. Money is still paid into the bank account that Andrew hasn't touched since that Friday morning. His bedroom remains much as he left it. His belongings still on the shelves where he kept them. So what are the possibilities? The first is that Andrew went to London for a private day out or some specific plan he had never told anyone about, and then met danger after arriving. This fits part of the case. It fits the limited possessions he took. It fits the lack of a passport. It fits the charger left behind. It fits a teenager doing something a little bit rebellious that he knew would cause trouble, since he'd skipped school as well, but also expecting that the trouble could be dealt with later. But it does struggle with what came next. If Andrew was simply out for the day, why has there never been a confirmed sighting after 11:25 AM? Why the one-way ticket? Why no contact? And why no later bank activity? The second possibility is that he had arranged to meet a person. That could explain the purpose of the journey. It could explain why he went to London alone during the school hours and without telling his family. It could also explain why the trail stopped quickly if the wrong person was waiting somewhere beyond the station for him. But that theory does have its own hole in the middle. What connected him to anyone? No public evidence has ever shown the message, the account, the name, or a supposed meeting point with someone that he was talking to. That evidence may exist outside of what has been discovered, or it may just not exist at all. Without that, the hypothesis still remains very uncomfortable, but also unproven. The third possibility is a voluntary disappearance. Andrew was highly intelligent, and people have survived under false or improvised identities before. His father has kept alive the possibility that Andrew could still be out there somewhere. Missing People and police appeals are written in a way that leaves room for that. Kevin even reached for a comparison from television, wondering whether his son had done what a character in one of Andrew's favourite old sitcoms did. Walk away from an ordinary, expected life and simply start again as somebody else. Glennis has wondered something similar, whether Andrew, clever enough for Cambridge, but never enthusiastic about the path that seemed to be laid out for him, wanted out of that trajectory more than he wanted out of the family itself. But practically, Andrew was still 14. He had a small amount of money, no passport, and no known plan for sustaining himself. Remaining hidden from the family, police, banks, official records, and public appeals for almost 19 years would be an extraordinary thing to manage, especially starting as someone so young. An accident is possible too. Cities are full of places where things can happen out of sight, but again, the evidence does not point there either. The searches, appeals, age-progressed images, and years of attention have not produced a location, a body, or a confirmed path away from King's Cross. And then there's foul play, either planned or opportunistic. Many seem to think it is the explanation that best accounts for the trace going completely cold afterwards. But it still has to deal with all of the same unanswered questions, where there is just no evidence in support of anything. It does seem that every idea can explain one part of the case, and then starts to strain against another. The money and the belongings that he left behind suggest that he was not leaving forever. The one-way ticket seems to complicate that. King's Cross should have produced more evidence, and somehow it did not, though I do wonder if the authorities had identified Andrew sooner on the CCTV tape, and before the CCTVs began to tape over themselves, what might have been discovered. As a result, all we know is that Andrew got off the train at around 11:20 and out of the station at 11:25. Those 5 minutes are the last little stretch of known time before the whole case opens into uncertainty and speculation. He had made it to London and was not lost yet. He was there with whatever intentions he had that carried him from Doncaster to London that morning. Then he stepped out of the station into the middle of the day, surrounded by people who had no idea that anything was wrong. After that, there is no confirmed direction, no confirmed meeting with anyone, and no confirmed sighting. Andrew left home in Doncaster, returned when the house was empty, changed clothes, took money, boarded a train, reached King's Cross, and then walked out of view. His family have spent nearly 19 years trying to understand exactly what happened, though as of now, it's still not understood. What do you think happened here? I'd be very interested to know what you make of it. With that about brings us to the end of this. I'd just like to take the time to thank you for watching, and a big thank you to the patrons who've been running around on the screen. If you found the video interesting, then please do remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you didn't like it, then feel free to give me a thumbs down. I'm just looking for your honest opinion either way. I hope that you've had a great day or evening, depending on where you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Be safe guys, look after each other, and peace.